I'm Margo Adams Larson, Inspiration Entrepreneur. Welcome to the Inspired Hive podcast, where we're creating a community of business and leadership professionals through meaningful conversations designed to inspire one another. Today, I am thrilled to chat with Brock Miller. He is principal and owner of Building Wealth Financial Advisory, LLC. He's on a mission to contribute meaningfully to the future by helping folks grow their financial literacy through disciplined, low cost, and evidence based investing. Growing up in a small community, he saw the role that financial literacy plays in shaping people's lives. I've had the pleasure of hearing a lot about Brock's teachings that have filtered through his classmates during his time at the United States Air Force Academy. In addition to his academic career in business management, he has now earned his Series 65 license as an investment advisor representative, and he's a second lieutenant in the U.S. Air Force on his way to being a pilot. Let's listen in. There is no better way to honor those who are serving our country than to support their journey. Welcome to the Inspired Hive podcast, Brock.
Thank you, Margo.
I am so glad that you were willing to come on and chat with us. I want to thank you so much for your willingness to defend our freedoms and serve in our military, and also for your focus on helping others with financial literacy.
Thank you. I appreciate all that. It's nice to be able to do both of the things and help people along the way.
This has been a topic that I've really wanted to chat with someone on the Hive podcast for quite some time. Since I started the podcast, it's been a realization for me in consulting with folks building businesses that money mindset really plays a significant role in entrepreneurship and even in leadership. And, the things that I've heard you mention to your peers, and now what I've seen in terms of what you're posting out on social media, it really has a lot to do with helping folks really understand and become literate in terms of their financial needs and how they manage their money. And um, I just don't think we get enough education in our systems of education, even in higher education. There's not a lot of focus on it, and I'm just so thrilled that you're open to sharing some of your knowledge and insights with us.
Yep. It's really been kind of a fun journey, and like you said, it's in a way it's sad to see how few or how little people are taught early on or ever about financial literacy, and it comes out like it is fairly evident when people are you try to make decisions, and it's difficult when you don't have the background to understand kind of what you're getting into.
Yeah. I actually just saw a reel about the difference between a debit card and a credit card, and the importance of using a credit card and not a debit card, and that it really appears people don't even understand you can pay them off at the end of the month. And that would be the strategy, of course, to perhaps practice. But it's small things like that that really add up over time.
That's right. Yeah, and that's definitely a great topic because a lot of people, like you said, they kind of just grow up and they get a bank account and the bank sends them a debit card, so they use the debit card or they use cash, and that's simple. That's fair enough and easy, but like kind of one of the things that's misunderstood that the bank is typically what you would just want to hold your money, and then having the credit card actually gives you that liability protection because a lot of people don't realize that if you swipe your debit card and your information is stolen, you're liable,
Yeah.
99% of the time. But if you swipe your credit card, you can dispute those transactions, and just it's a simple protection for you, along with a lot of the other benefits if you pay the card off,
Mhm.
the full statement balance. And that's the trick there where a lot of people get in trouble, and then they kind of demonize the tool instead of the intent.
I think In talking to folks, there's a large amount of people that don't know you can pay it off.
Yeah.
And that goes to the marketing of the credit card companies. But I think, the the benefits you bring up there are just so key and important to your financial health down the road, right? And understanding interest and, clearly there's maybe some idea that bank interest rates or credit card interest rates are accumulating highly. Uh, and I'm reminded of a quote about, those who understand compound interest have a different perspective on life than those who don't, right? And
Right.
um, I'm really curious how you got started or where your story began in kind of following this path.
I think for me, it was so both my parents kind of been in the business since. So my mom kind of does taxes. My dad's been in several managerial positions that have kind of put like financial on kind of the forefront of like their minds at times. And we didn't actually talk a whole lot about money, at home. It wasn't anything like it was just surrounded with it. It wasn't really like that, but it was enough to be able to ask the questions and get some quality answers and find that interest of, oh, this really could be the not like the answer, it's not the golden ticket, but it's something that done well and done for a long period of time can really be beneficial. So I was interested fairly young. I didn't really start investing until about 16, and I actually had to use a custodial brokerage account under my mom's name, right? Because you can't have those investment accounts unless you're an adult. So that was kind of interesting to kind of work with initially, but started investing there, made a little bit of money, and it starts to get even more appealing at that point, right? So, and then I slowly just, uh, I gradually just kind of learned a little bit more and a little bit more, and it's kind of got me to the point now where it's, it almost feels like a second nature, like a lot of things that most people wouldn't truly consider like the monetary value of those decisions as much. Sometimes it's difficult to shut it off, right? Because it's always in the back of your mind, and that can be good and bad at the same time.
A couple things you mentioned there that I think are really important. And one of those is the conversations that families have around money or lack of conversations that families have around money. And I think, I also grew up in a family where my dad was a commodities manager in a stock brokerage firm, and he never once invested in the stock market. His investments were all in bonds and, managed low risk investments. Um, and so the family money was never talked about. That was his job, but that wasn't anything that was talked about. And in fact, not really encouraged to talk about. Yet, how was I to learn budgeting and bank
Right.
balances and all of those kinds of things? And I certainly had a bank account. I remember going to to open my first bank account. They took me to the bank when I was little. I remember that. But the discussions of money are the important things. And
Right.
contrasting that to, I have friends who have very open discussions about how they manage their finances in front of whoever's at the dinner table, kids and their friends included, right? And there's just, there's certainly a healthy way of going about that, but if you're not exposed to those conversations, it becomes don't talk about money. And I think a lot of people have stress around that. Do you see that?
Oh, I definitely see that. And I think you explained it really well because there is a little bit of a taboo around money. People get a little uncomfortable every time that it's brought up, whether it's, if am I asking you about your money situation, or am I talking about mine, or are we talking about a general? But either way, people get just a little bit more tense because I think largely they're uncertain that what they're currently doing is the right decision.
Mm,
And it's not something of like they have chosen to do the wrong thing. It's a I'm not sure what I should have done. So talking about it, I don't want to sound like I made a poor decision. I don't want to sound uneducated on the topic, but there's a little bit of humility in it that if you're struggling with something, you need to reach out because things compound, and specifically with money, it can make a very significant difference over the course of a lifetime. And back to the whole point of like how families talk about it, if your parents had either maybe a bad experience with investing or a bad experience with credit cards or something like that, or they just never really dealt with it, a lot of times they get a negative bias toward these things early on, which then passes to you, whether that's passive conversations or an actual you shouldn't do these things. But it's hard to break those mindsets after they've kind of just been planted in your mind, maybe at a young age, maybe not, but uh, it is something that really is hard to break out of for people. But you need kind of a, I guess, kind of like a connection to either somebody that knows it or somehow it sparks your interest specifically for you to grow within it. And a bunch of people's journeys are different in that. But at the end of the day, I think everybody could value from increased financial literacy, like we talked about.
Well, it's interesting in terms of how that education comes about as well. And I had an author, Julia Cook, on who she writes children's books, but one of her most recent ones is about finances and money. And it doesn't really grow on trees, but you have to learn and understand some of the concepts. And being able to teach that at a young age, I think, is key. And we don't see a lot of that taught in our education system, either in, just the basic maths and checkbooks and those kinds of things, even to really understanding the responsibility going off to college of, it's your parents have to fill out the FAFSA, right? Like whether or not you're going to use some type of money from wherever the FAFSA money comes from. And it's fascinating to me that that's the essence of kind of American culture. And I'm curious if you have some comments about kind of when to start that education or what you may have experienced with that.
Right. And there's, a wide variation on when people introduce their children with these concepts. But I mean, I've seen some videos, I've seen some people where they'll, instead of giving just an allowance to their kids, they'll have them do the chores tied to the allowance, and then after they're paid their allowance, they're going to put 50% into either like savings or investments, or put 30% into their fund or maybe their needs, and then the other like 20 in whichever one they decided to weight higher or lower. But and you can do that fairly young because you can understand, generally speaking, um, how the currency or whatever this item is can pay for the things that you're trying to do. And then when you value certain things more, you can understand the weighting. And I think that's a very important like starter concept is where you put your money. But it's
Mhm.
very difficult to kind of think, okay, I'm not seeing this instant gratification of putting all my money in my once bin. I what if I put my all of my money in this bin or that bin, but if you put just a small amount into the savings and the investments or whatever, what could you have in the future? That gets that's much more nuanced, and it's
Right.
hard for children to really kind of grasp that concept. But starting early and then kind of showing them maybe if you were to open them say a high yield savings account and they put $100 in there, and then every period they would see, oh, where'd this additional money come from, and then you can kind of explain how the interest works and that kind of thing, and that'll start it. And they're smart enough to kind of connect the dots, but you
Mhm.
kind of have to just ease them into it and then let them ask the questions, let them be curious about what it is, and try not to just force it at them, because with kids a lot of times that's the surefire way to get them uninterested in a topic.
Right. Right. And it requires parents to have that literacy.
Yeah, it does. It does.
And I think, that's a piece that when we don't have that, how we can grasp that without, social media is great, but there also has to be some of those tools. So I like your idea of some of that practice of seeing what the bank account can do and, you know, learning those healthy habits of where those how you spend the buckets or how you divide how you create the buckets to begin with, I guess, but then kind of the portions or percentages of where things go is important too.
Yeah, and it's difficult. It really is, but I kind of the key there is just letting people find what they're curious about and let them kind of work with it. And then if you had several kids and one might be, oh, I really like the investing and all, it's great, and then the other one might not want to do it at all.
Hmm.
And you also have to balance that with, oh, they're still kids, right? Like, are we gonna like really push this right now? Is it useful? If we wait 6 months or a year or whatever, is it going to be a more fruitful conversation? So that's something that there's so much nuance of how do we approach it that somebody outside of your family isn't going to be able to advise you on.
Right. I'm curious if there's a time you think back to where things kind of really started to click for you in terms of your journey of what got you interested in um, just kind of developing this aspect for yourself.
Yeah. Um, there's been a few times that I probably could reach back to, but I'd say probably the most like formative one would be more so like specific investments, right? So when I was still in high school, I was actually in a class with my FBLA, Future Business Leaders of America. Other people might have had DECA, or like a business kind of class, but I was in a class of hers, so we were around a lot. And I'd gotten some of my work done, or I typically got it done pretty quickly, and then I'd get on and I'd be looking at stocks, I'd be looking at investments, I'd be watching the things that I was interested in, checking out charts and a bunch of different ways and kind of learning. And a lot of the stuff at that time, I wasn't fully I didn't fully understand it, but
Mhm.
the exposure to it helped. And I think that kind of that it was a very low threat because when you're younger you don't have a whole lot of money, you can put a little money here, a little money there, and if everything went poorly you're still okay, right? Because you're not having to pay for a lot of like expenses and bills and I guess stuff. So it really is the time to experiment that I think a lot of people miss. And then when they want to start later in life, maybe they're not as comfortable because they know that they need this amount of stability, they need this amount of money per month, and they can't really um, bend that budget very much. So I'd say kind of that formative time would be the a junior senior year of high school where I was able to just experiment, really enjoy it, do it more as like a hobby, and see what it is before it was stressful, before there's a little bit of a weight of money on your shoulders.
I think having that, it's almost like playtime, right? To be able to try things out and
Right.
see and learn from kind of what happens with what you do, that can grow a comfort or help you see if that's navigating what you want to accomplish with the spend of either effort or money or time on that. So interesting. Um, are there aspects that you see or connect with your development of leadership? Because I know you have a whole list of accolades in that area that you would tie to this sense of literacy related to finances.
Definitely. And this is actually something that is a good intro to a lot of people, right? Because it can take one whole concept and bring in this other one without it being about your money. It can just be this has helped other people. This has been beneficial for me, maybe, and I can present it that way. So I've actually given one brief to some lieutenants, and then another brief coming up to some junior enlisted members in the Air Force. And one of the slides in there is how money and your comfort or your stability with it can allow you to be calmer, can allow you to be more decisive, can allow you to really have the freedom to make the decision that you want to make without worrying about, in that case, what's going on at home with my money, what's going on here, what do I need to be thinking about other than my leadership or my work.
Hmm.
And that's something that there's so many things that can apply to that in our life. But statistics say that money is one of the highest, I guess, percentage. I guess trying to think here, but it is like one of the most prevalent issues in people's lives, right? And it brings on a lot of stress. So when you're stressed about something that isn't what you're trying to do, you're going to be less able to do that work positively. Um, and that's one that can really bring out kind of the curiosity of people because they're familiar with the leadership and they're familiar with the work that they do and everything, but and they understand kind of that stress with money because most people aren't in a situation where they just don't have to worry at all about it. So it hits home for a lot of people.
I can definitely see that. And I think, you know, having confidence around where money matters are and your money mindset can really allay that stress level so that you're you're able to focus, able to do other things and not have that kind of in the back of your mind. Are there any lessons that you've learned through your investing or fiscal, kind of journey that have kind of come across over to some of your other areas, leadership, even piloting?
Right. Yeah. It's a good question. It's not something that immediately had a thought to, but I would say both things and in a bunch of different avenues or aspects of life is just like the patience that you need to have with things and not get too involved, not get too invested in any one thing, right? And that makes a lot of sense in terms of money when you say invested in one thing, right? You don't put all your eggs in one basket. But at the
Hmm.
same time, um, with life, you don't really want to invest all of your time, all your resources into one thing unless it really is something that you're 100% about. And in life, there's almost never a time where you're going to be 100% about it. And in investments, there's never a time. And if somebody tells you there's a 100% chance, that is a red flag and that's time to head out of there.
Run.
So that's one of the big things is having the patience to make the right decisions and not being overly positive about any one thing, right? You need to be a little skeptical. You need to be your own, like devil's advocate to your own thoughts, and that is difficult for a lot of people, and that's kind of where the financial advising comes in. Where even if you are confident with your money, even if you are confident with investing, you're going to get into a little bit of a confirmation bias a lot of times because you're going to seek out information that is saying that you're right. And
Hmm.
maybe you are. That's great. If you were right 100% of the time, that'd be amazing. But it's not the reality. So the financial advising piece is it's helpful to have that that second perspective on any one thing that you're doing, and that transfers all the way over to leadership and many other places in life to just settle down, ask some questions, and don't be too confident in your own decisions um, unless you really get some confirmation from several people and kind of bring it all together.
Well, that speaks to surrounding yourself with people who maybe have skills in areas you don't, but also that are aware of your goals and what you're trying to accomplish, so that it's not a siloed perspective. It can be, you can have good knowledge to make good decisions. And it's very rare that you can do that very quickly. Like it takes a while to kind of
Right.
find a board of directors or a group of advisors. And, I think what we see in leadership is when we have a solid set of advisors, we have some really good advancement in whatever whether it's an organization or a business or an entrepreneurial endeavor. And that same is true for ourselves at home, right? Like if we have good advisors. And so I guess now is a great time to jump to my question or opportunity to brag on yourself a little in terms of what you have going on. And I know you've got a few new things that are happening.
Definitely. Kind of like you mentioned at the start, I've only recently started the financial advising business. So I got licensed as an investment advisor representative um, back in November, a little bit before Thanksgiving. And then I was kind of looking around for um, a a job, right? Because as an investment advisor representative, you need to have an investment advisor firm to be a representative of to actually practice. So there's a little bit of a kind of confusion there for a lot of people, but it's difficult to find a job when you are already working. You would need to be remote and you would need to have very flexible hours, right? So I'm not typically a very attractive candidate for somebody that is looking for a full time advisor, right? Um, so that was something that kind of moved me into that next aspect there of just starting my own firm. And um, it was difficult at first. There's a lot of paperwork and a lot of regulatory things that you have to go through. So that's kind of why we ended up just getting fully registered here. Would have been about the middle of January, and so it was exciting to finally get through that. And there were a few different iterations of the paperwork and regulatory things that we had to do, just kind of work through. But having gone all the way through it, and now to be on the other side of it, and actually being able to onboard clients and start doing what I had planned to do initially much later in my life to finally just have it ready to go. And a lot of it's just kind of keeping up with it and a little bit of a continuing education on the financial aspects. But that's really been the majority uh, of my time spent here is really kind of getting it all going and to finally just take a breath and be like, okay, we're able
Um,
to go now.
well, congratulations, because not only have you started and launched a business, but there I know is a ton of red tape that goes with anything in the financial world. And it's a lot of hoops to jump through, and it's a lot of times where you have opportunity to question whether this is really what you want to do.
Yeah,
And I love hearing now on the other side, you are just still excited and rolling with things. And kind of a piece of that is why wait till later, right? Like you had some time on your hands to really launch things early and lots of lessons in that, I'm sure.
definitely. It was a little bit interesting kind of getting into it because Um, while waiting for training, you're a little bit uncertain. You might get moved up. You might start early. So there's a little bit of
Hmm.
uncertainty there, which can give you a little anxiety. But it was nice to be able to kind of, oh, I can study, I can take the test, right? And even if I took the test, passed, and didn't get a firm start or get a job, like that's okay. And then kind of the next step, I was like, okay, I think I've got time for this, and then you can just continue to build upon it. And now, like you said, it's nice to be able to do it much earlier in life because not only am I able to help people and actually practice what I was wanting to earlier, but you build that experience, you build that credibility, and not only that, but the experience piece. You can after you have a certain amount of experience in these fields, you can pursue further credentials, right? Like a CFP, a Certified Financial Planner, a CFA, and those kind of things are very sought after, right? So it's something there's something to be said about starting the thing early, and even if it's not as large as you might want it to be or as fruitful as you might want it to be, it really gets your feet under you and builds that foundation early, so that when you're able to, you can actually like bring it to what your vision of it was.
Well, success comes with action, right? And the earlier you can step into that action, the more you can grow kind of what you want from that. And I think interestingly, that's true with investment too, right? Like $10 invested today is a lot of dinners 60 years from now, right?
Yeah. And that's kind of a funny one too, because it's easy to counter that by saying, oh, but inflation, oh, but this, and that's what a lot of people are. It's a valid argument, right? But that's even more of an argument to invest, where people say, oh, I don't want to invest because it's risky and the uncertainty of the inflation. But a lot of people, they just decide to keep their money in a savings account, and it's actively losing purchasing power instead of it maybe, right? If you had like a bad period, a bad year, the market was down. But that's the one thing that I think is kind of the intro of really getting people to be like urgent about learning about money, is you have to kind of present something to them like they're losing something, because there's kind of a behavioral study about how people are they feel more pain when they lose something than they feel good about a gain that they're getting. So you really got to present those negative aspects, and a lot of times people get very defensive when you do that, and that's kind of one of the tactics that a lot of people choose to take with like a social media presence. Is you kind of have to say things that are a little bit out there, a little bit controversial at times, and I have to stay away from that. Right, it's financial advising and the stuff being attached. There's lines there, but you have to say something that people don't it hits home to really get them to make changes that are going to benefit them later in their life. But right now, it's hard to break out of that mindset.
Is there a piece of fiscal literacy advice or mindset that you would share with the listeners that um, might be
Right.
helpful?
Yeah. So one of the main things that you would see if you kind of get on the internet and you're looking into investing, specifically for younger people, but more so people that are making less than they might in the future, is just, if you're going to open an account, open a Roth IRA, do yourself a favor and max it out every year you can. Or if you can't max it out, putting as much money as you can in each year, because once that year is over, you're typically unable to put any more money back into it. There's a few different avenues, right? There's some back doors to that, but you don't want to miss the opportunity to put the money in there, because a Roth IRA specifically is one where you're taxed up front, but then when it comes out in 59 and a half, kind of in retirement for people, is it comes out tax free on the contributions that you put in, as well as the growth that you made. And growth over 45 years, if you invested at 20 until 65 or something, can be very, very large. And that's a big aspect that people miss, is taxes can take a very large sum of the money that you make. But if you do it in a proper way, it can limit that a lot. So if you do nothing else, a lot of people would say open the Roth IRA, start it, and then once you start learning about these things, your future you will be thanking you for doing that.
Well, I will tell you that my father, his advice was always as soon as you're 18 to contribute to your retirement in full as much as you can each year to that savings account, because by the time you can retire, that's a million plus. Now,
Right.
I grew up in Canada, so it might be slightly less than that. But this is advice through the ages that folks really, I think, those who have done their homework, those who are working in the industry, those who are working in even the stock industry are sharing. So thank you so much for emphasizing that for us. Is there anything else you'd like to share? Any lessons learned along the way that before we wrap up?
I think the main one, I kind of mentioned it earlier, is really the humility piece that comes with money, financial literacy. A lot of people that you want, and this is with many different things, but specifically within money, a lot of people want to feel like they are on top of it. They want to feel like they're making the best decision for themselves, as you should. But the feeling is a whole lot different than the actual logical what is best for you. And you need to do the research, do your due diligence, and make sure that you're making the right decisions. And that can come with, what bank do you use? That can come with, am I using a credit card or a debit card? Am I opening my investment accounts? And there's so many different ways to look at it, but constantly asking yourself, am I doing the right thing in these avenues? Am I doing the right thing? And that's anywhere in life, but specifically with money, things change. Businesses might offer different things. There might be some negative aspects that you didn't see initially, but you need to be very aware of where your money's at, why it is there, and what purpose is it serving for you. Because once you earn money, it needs to be working for you. Because you don't want, if you work for every dollar that you ever made, it can get very rough on your body and your mental health and everything. But if you're able to bring money in and then deploy it in ways that are able to make you more successful and your life more fruitful, whether you want to travel or you want to have nice things or whatever it is for you, the money needs to serve you. You're not working for the money just for, you know, to survive. You're working for the money so that you have more to make your life as fruitful as it can be.
Oh, thank you for that. Well, it has been a total pleasure to visit with you, Brock. Thank you so much for your time today. Each episode, I close with a quote and I select the quote ahead of time. I knew we were talking about money, so I went out to a couple of my money mindset influencers. One is T. Harv Eker, and I couldn't just land on one quote today. So I have a quote from T. Harv Eker that says, "The single biggest difference between financial success and financial failure is how well you manage your money. It's simple. To master money, you must manage money." And very supportive of that quote is one from Charles A. Jaffe. And I hope this brings inspiration to others. It's kind of aligned with all the things that you've been talking about, Brock. And that is, it's not your salary that makes you rich, it's your spending habits. And how you divvy up what comes in and how you choose to use that wisely makes all the difference in the world. Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Inspired Hive podcast. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Inspired Hive Podcast and hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. I'm looking forward to connecting with you again. And as always, remember, be inspired and live inspired.